My topic is surge pricing in detail explain, and let's go to the topic and let's go to the start. Surge pricing is a pricing strategy used by businesses, particularly in the transportation and service industries, where prices are increased during periods of high demand or low supply. This practice allows for businesses to capitalize on opportunities to make more revenue during peak periods and ensure that their services are still available during periods of low supply. For example, ride-sharing or taxi companies might increase fares during peak hours or during special events, such as holidays or music festivals, to incentivize drivers and ensure that customers can still find rides when demand is high. Ultimately, surge pricing helps to balance supply and demand and allows businesses to optimize their operations and profitability. Surge pricing, also known as dynamic pricing, is a pricing strategy commonly employed by businesses, particularly in the transportation and hospitality industries. It involves adjusting prices based on changes in supply and demand conditions. In the context of transportation services like ride-sharing or taxi companies, surge pricing is implemented during periods of high demand. When there are more people requesting rides than available drivers, surge pricing kicks in, and the prices for rides increase. The aim is to incentivize more drivers to join the platform or to encourage existing drivers to pick up more passengers during peak times. Surge pricing is typically implemented through algorithms that analyze real-time data, such as the number of available drivers and the number of ride requests. When the algorithm detects a surge in demand, it automatically raises prices to balance supply and demand. The surge pricing mechanism has received both praise and criticism. Proponents argue that it helps ensure reliable service availability during high demand periods and motivates more drivers to participate in the system. On the other hand, critics contend that it can lead to significant price increases, especially during emergencies or events when demand surges unexpectedly, potentially creating affordability issues for customers. It's worth noting that surge pricing is not limited to transportation services. Other industries, such as hotels, airlines, and entertainment events, may also adopt similar pricing strategies during periods of high demand. Surge pricing is also known as the dynamic pricing model used by ride-sharing companies like Uber and Lyft, where fares are increased to balance the supply and demand. This is why you find increased pricing during rush hours, events, and rainy seasons. Popular ride-sharing companies use this economic model to provide services to customers who are in desperate need of a ride and are willing to pay for it when supply is limited. People who can afford to pay the incremental fare can take a ride, but what about the people who can't? Using surge pricing often can lead to a decrease in customer loyalty and retention because they feel exploited. But there are some benefits too. Customers don't have to wait longer during peak hours. Surge pricing enables aggregators like Uber to offer services at a lower price on a regular period. Surge pricing is a pricing strategy used by companies, especially in the transportation industry, to increase prices during periods of high demand. The concept is to incentivize more drivers to come onto the road or to encourage consumers to adjust their consumption patterns to balance supply and demand. For example, ride-hailing services such as Uber and Lyft may increase their fares during peak hours, such as rush hour or during major events. Similarly, airlines may raise their ticket prices during holiday periods or when a major event or conference is taking place in a particular destination. The surge pricing strategy can help companies balance supply and demand while increasing revenue, but it can also be controversial as it can lead to price gouging and dissatisfied customers. In Uber, surge pricing is calculated based on the real-time demand in a particular location. Say, there is a popular event at your place, and Uber might get a lot of ride requests from people around your location at a particular period. Now Uber's algorithm detects this surge, adds a multiplier to the standard rates, and will show this updated fare to the customers on their mobile app. Surge pricing occurs when a company raises the price of its product or service if there is an increase in demand, and lowers prices when demand is weak. This article looks at two case studies with a view to show what business models a surge pricing strategy is best adopted in. For instance, Uber, a taxi site that connects drivers with people needing a ride, raised some eyebrows when they announced that they would be implementing surge pricing on New Year's Eve. Uber said that this strategy would help to increase supply as it would encourage more drivers to work. Without surge pricing, Uber maintained that supply would eventually run out and people would be unable to get to their destinations. They declared that when demand started to ebb, their prices would fall automatically. The surge price would also apply during other periods of high demand, for example bad weather, public transport strikes, etc. Uber does notify the customer when surge pricing is in effect, and the fare estimator provides an accurate estimate of the fare before the customer confirms the request. Our goal is to be as reliable as possible and connecting you with a driver whenever you need one. At times of high demand, the number of drivers we can connect you with becomes limited. As a result, prices increase to encourage more drivers to become available. We take notifying you of the current pricing seriously. To that end, you'll see a notification screen in your app whenever there is surge pricing. You'll have to accept those higher rates before we connect you to a driver. Uber is always a reliable ride. Being unavailable, inconvenient is the opposite of Uber. The average surge pricing multiple on New Year's Eve 2013 in New York was about 2x normal prices. Some customers claimed it was more like 6x. Critics of this pricing surge reckon that it will alienate customers, denting Uber's business. Microeconomics suggests that although Uber's model does have a flaw, its dynamic pricing should be welcomed. Surge pricing, also known as dynamic pricing or demand-based pricing, is a pricing strategy used by businesses, particularly in the transportation and hospitality industries, to adjust prices based on demand. Surge pricing aims to balance supply and demand by increasing prices during peak periods or when demand exceeds available capacity. The concept of surge pricing gained significant popularity with the rise of ride-hailing services like Uber and Lyft. These companies use algorithms to automatically increase fares during high-demand periods, such as rush hour or busy weekends. The goal is to incentivize more drivers to come online and meet the increased demand. Surge pricing serves several purposes. Supply and demand management. By increasing prices during peak demand, surge pricing encourages more service providers to participate, thereby increasing the available supply and reducing wait times. Efficient allocation of resources. Higher prices incentivize customers to consider alternatives or adjust their travel plans, thus reducing congestion and ensuring that those who are willing to pay more can secure the service. Revenue maximization. Surge pricing allows businesses to capitalize on peak demand periods and generate additional revenue. It can be particularly useful in industries where capacity is limited, such as transportation or events. Critics of surge pricing argue that it can lead to price gouging and exploitation of customers during emergencies or times of high demand. However, proponents argue that surge pricing is a fair reflection of supply and demand dynamics and encourages the efficient use of resources. It's important to note that surge pricing is not limited to transportation services. It can also be found in other industries like hotels, airlines, and concert tickets, where prices may increase during popular travel seasons, holidays, or when demand exceeds available inventory. Ultimately, surge pricing is a dynamic pricing strategy that aims to balance supply and demand by adjusting prices in real time based on market conditions. Taxi markets have long needed a shake-up. In theory, entry should be easy. All that is needed is a car and a driving license, with new drivers keeping cab fares close to costs. Yet in many cities, cabs are far from the competitive ideal and decades of regulation conspire to keep entrants out. The convenience of hailing a cab from the comfort of a sofa or bar stool has given Uber a loyal fan base, but it comes at a cost. Most of Uber's prices are slightly cheaper than a street-hailed cab, but when demand spikes, the surge prices kick in. Price discrimination in any form can alienate customers. It seems unfair when the charges for drugs vary across countries, the price of a train ticket varies with the buyer's age, or, as in Uber's case, the price varies depending on the time that the journey is booked. However, a 2006 paper by Mark Armstrong of Oxford University explained that price discrimination is not necessarily a bad thing. A firm offering a single price to all customers faces a trade-off. Lowering prices raises sales but means offering a cut to customers prepared to pay more. Customers who value the good at more than it costs to produce might miss out on a one-price-fits-all system, as many punters who have tried to find a regular cab on New Year's Eve will know. Uber's price surge aims to solve this. Like many technology companies, Uber is a middleman. It links independent cab drivers with customers wanting a ride in the same way that Google links searchers and advertisers or eBay links sellers and bidders. The business model only works when successful matches are made. You can expect rates to surges raise the pay of Uber's drivers. They get 80% of any fare, If they drive their own car, more cars are tempted onto the roads at times of high demand. Prices are high at 2 a.m. at the weekend not just because punters are willing to pay more, but also because drivers don't want to work then. Surge pricing, also known as dynamic pricing or demand-based pricing, is a pricing strategy commonly used by businesses, particularly in the transportation and hospitality industries. It involves adjusting the prices of goods or services based on fluctuations in demand. The concept of surge pricing is to raise prices during times of high demand and limited supply in order to incentivize customers to adjust their consumption patterns or to allocate resources more efficiently. It is often implemented through algorithms that analyze real-time data on factors such as customer demand, available supply, and other market conditions. The algorithm then determines the appropriate price increase based on the level of demand. Surge pricing can be seen in various industries. For example, ride-sharing companies like Uber and Lyft often implement surge pricing during peak hours or events when there is high demand for rides. During these periods, the prices for rides can increase significantly, sometimes reaching multiples of the regular fare. The goal is to encourage more drivers to come online and meet the demand, balancing the supply and demand equation. Similarly, hotels and airlines may use surge pricing during busy travel seasons, holidays, or special events when demand for accommodations or flights is high. The prices for hotel rooms or airline tickets can be adjusted upwards to reflect the increased demand. While surge pricing can be beneficial for businesses by maximizing revenue and balancing supply and demand, it can also be controversial. Critics argue that it may lead to price gouging, where customers are forced to pay significantly higher prices during urgent or necessary situations. Additionally, some customers may find it unfair or unpredictable, as they are accustomed to fixed or predictable pricing. Regulations and consumer protection laws differ across jurisdictions, and some places have implemented laws to restrict or regulate surge pricing practices. It is important for businesses to consider the potential impacts on their customers and the overall perception of fairness when implementing surge pricing strategies. This strategy is common for firms that operate platforms or two-sided markets which link buyers and sellers, according to a 2006 paper by Jean-Charles Rochet and Jean Tirole of Toulouse University. Firms often tilt the market to give one side a particularly sweet deal. Nightclubs let women in free to justify charging men a hefty fee. Telephone directories are given away to create a readership which advertisers pay to access. The theory predicts each side's deal depends on two things: price sensitivity and how well stocked each side of the market is. Uber's price surge fits perfectly. Friday night revelers are hit by a double whammy since they are willing to pay up precisely when the pool of cabs is low. There is some evidence to suggest that Uber's surge pricing is improving taxi markets. The firm says drivers are sensitive to price, so that the temptation to earn more is getting more of their drivers onto the roads at antisocial hours. This suggests surge pricing has encouraged the number of taxis to vary with demand, with the market getting bigger during peak hours, which is good news for customers. However, the inflexibility of Uber's matchmaking fee, a fixed 20% of the fare, means that it may fail to optimize the matching of demand and supply. In quiet times, when fares are low, it may work well. Suppose it links lots of potential passengers willing to pay $20 for a journey with drivers happy to travel for $15. A 20%, $4, fee leaves both sides content. Now imagine a Friday night, with punters willing to pay $100 for a ride, and drivers happy to take $90. There should be scope for a deal, but Uber's $20 fee means such journeys won't happen. Despite the revenues a matchmaking fee generates, it may not be Uber's best strategy. A fixed membership charge is often a firm's best option in two-sided markets. By charging drivers a flat monthly fee, Uber would generate revenue without creating a price wedge that gets in the way of matches. Since stumping up cash might put infrequent drivers off, they could be offered a cheaper category of membership. Uber should keep its surge pricing in place, but to make the market as big as possible, and really revolutionize taxi travel, it might need to retune its fees. Uber has brought technological savvy and a slick user experience to the taxi market in many countries, and acquired a dedicated following. Uber has real-time data on demand, nudges supply to meet it, and makes it vastly easier for drivers and riders to connect. But some are having trouble swallowing that rationale. An app called Cut the Surge claims to be able to predict Uber's rate for the upcoming hour. If a warning of a surge comes up on the Uber app, Cut the surge will tell you when you can expect rates to return to normal. Surge pricing, also known as dynamic pricing, is a pricing strategy commonly used by businesses, particularly in the transportation and hospitality industries. It involves adjusting prices based on fluctuations in supply and demand. In the context of transportation, surge pricing is often associated with ride-hailing services like Uber and Lyft. During periods of high demand, such as rush hours or busy weekends, the prices for rides may increase significantly. This surge in pricing aims to incentivize more drivers to get on the road and meet the increased demand. Surge pricing is typically implemented using algorithms that consider various factors, including the number of available drivers, the number of users seeking rides, and the anticipated duration of the surge. The algorithms automatically adjust the prices in real time, and users are notified of the surge pricing multiplier before confirming their ride request. The purpose of surge pricing is to balance supply and demand by encouraging more drivers to participate when demand is high. The higher prices incentivize drivers to go to areas with increased demand, as they can potentially earn more money during surge periods. On the other hand, the increased cost to users helps manage demand by encouraging some users to wait until the surge ends or explore alternative transportation options. It's important to note that surge pricing is a topic of debate and can be controversial. Critics argue that it can lead to significantly higher prices for consumers during peak times, making transportation less affordable. Others argue that it provides a necessary mechanism to ensure reliable service availability during high-demand periods. It's worth mentioning that surge pricing is not limited to transportation services. It can also be observed in other industries, such as hotels, where room rates may increase during popular events or peak tourist seasons. The underlying principle remains the same. Prices are adjusted based on supply and demand dynamics to optimize resource allocation and revenue generation. Another company, OpenTable, claims that surge pricing, also sometimes called premium pricing, may be the answer for diners looking for a table at popular dining venues where it is next to impossible to get a reservation. The table management company recently began testing its premium reservation service. According to the site, OpenTable diners have told the company that they are willing to pay for last-minute, prime-time reservations at popular restaurants. In a blog post aimed at restaurants, Vanny Shu, who leads global product marketing for consumer platforms, content, and discovery at OpenTable, writes, "With costs continuing to rise, many restaurants are looking for creative and simple ways to grow revenue, while continuing to deliver great hospitality. We know all restaurants face challenges, even the most popular ones. OpenTable is mostly aiming the premium feature for Fridays and Saturdays. It's similar to other booking options from Reserve, which charges a basic $5 concierge fee for tables. If a table is not readily available, Reserve allows users a separate bid option for access to high-demand tables at a particular date and time." In OpenTable's post, it positions the premium option for restaurants as a way of generating additional revenue and as part of the company's larger promise of helping make the entire dining experience more fulfilling for patrons and restaurants. The company, which was acquired last year for $2.6 billion by Priceline, notes that 100% of the proceeds go to the participating restaurant. Vanny Shu believes OpenTable can capture more value for peak time tables. Giving guests without the ability to plan ahead, last-minute business travelers, unexpected celebrations, etc., the opportunity to be seated will delight those in need of your hospitality. Plus, reaching OpenTable's most frequent diners, our app users, doesn't hurt either. The experience for restaurants should be seamless as we integrate this into our leading table management system. Surge pricing, also known as dynamic pricing, refers to a pricing strategy used by businesses, particularly in the transportation and hospitality industries, to adjust prices based on the level of demand or supply at a particular time. The concept gained significant popularity with the rise of ride-hailing services like Uber and Lyft. During periods of high demand, such as rush hour, holidays, or bad weather, surge pricing allows companies to increase prices temporarily to incentivize more drivers or service providers to be available or to better manage the demand-supply imbalance. The increased prices are intended to encourage surge pricing will be explained followed by different occasions where surge pricing happens. Furthermore, both the use cases, advantages, and disadvantages of surge pricing will be discussed. At the end of the article, Some practical advice will be given on how to implement surge pricing tactics within your pricing tooling. Surge pricing is a dynamic pricing method where prices are temporarily increased as a reaction to increased demand and mostly limited supply. Therefore, this form of dynamic pricing responds to market factors and helps to flexibly increase your prices. Surge pricing takes place in all kinds of industries, such as hospitality, tourism, entertainment, and of course in retail. Surge pricing can often be linked to time-based pricing. This dynamic pricing tactic changes prices depending on the time of day and expected or real-time measured high-demand peaks. Research showed that customers shop online mostly during weekly office hours and therefore online retailers raise prices during the morning and the afternoon, between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. When the evening starts, prices can then be lowered again to a normal level to react dynamically to market demand and only surge prices on times related to high demand. Another example of surge pricing connected directly to time-based pricing is during special events. When, for example, the Grand Slam is organized, demand for certain tennis products increases. During these moments, surge pricing tactics are often applied. Secondly, surge pricing can also be connected to weather-based pricing. This approach incorporates the weather forecast in pricing decisions, and once the weather conditions are favorable for a product category, surge pricing is applied. Imagine you are selling BBQs and the weather forecast for next week looks promising for the first time this summer. As a pricing strategist, you might want to increase prices as soon as possible, because of the higher expected demand for BBQs. The third most frequently used surge pricing tactic is location-based pricing. When this dynamic pricing method is used, selling prices are adjusted upon the geographical location of the buyer. Surge pricing can often be noticed in crowded cities or locations with high-income populations. In these cities, an elevated willingness to pay can be noticed. Places, where the cost of goods sold is higher due to above-average shipping costs, are another example of cities where prices often surge. However, surge pricing can also be controversial and lead to customer dissatisfaction. Some customers may refuse to pay higher prices, resulting in lost revenue for the businesses, and others may feel that they are being taken advantage of during a vulnerable time. Additionally, surge pricing may disproportionately affect low-income customers who cannot afford the inflated prices. In some cases, regulatory bodies may step in to limit the use of surge pricing or require businesses to provide transparency about their pricing strategies. Nonetheless, surge pricing remains a popular pricing strategy among businesses that want to maximize their profits during peak demand periods. Surge pricing, also known as dynamic pricing or demand-based pricing, is a pricing strategy employed by businesses, particularly in the transportation and hospitality industries, to adjust prices based on demand and supply conditions. It involves charging higher prices during periods of increased demand or limited availability. The concept of surge pricing gained popularity with the advent of ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft. These companies use algorithms to automatically increase fares when demand exceeds the number of available drivers. The surge pricing mechanism aims to incentivize more drivers to get on the road during peak times, ensuring that riders can find a ride when they need it the most. High demand, surge pricing often occurs during peak hours, such as rush hour or late at night when many people are looking for rides. Increased demand can lead to higher prices as the system attempts to balance supply and demand. Limited supply: if there aren't enough drivers available to meet the demand, surge pricing may be activated to encourage more drivers to come online by offering higher earnings potential. Special events: surge pricing can be implemented during major events like concerts, sports games, or holidays when large numbers of people require transportation services. The surge pricing algorithm takes into account the expected increase in demand and adjusts prices accordingly. Efficient allocation of resources: by increasing prices during peak demand, surge pricing encourages more drivers to be available, reducing the time customers have to wait for a ride. Income incentive for service providers: surge pricing allows service providers to earn higher wages during busy periods, incentivizing them to work when demand is high. Balancing supply and demand: by adjusting prices dynamically, surge pricing helps match the supply of services with customer demand, resulting in a more efficient distribution of resources. Critics of surge pricing argue that it can lead to price gouging and unfairness, especially during emergencies or natural disasters when people may need transportation the most. However, Proponents argue that surge pricing is a market-based mechanism that ensures the availability of services during times of high demand, and that without it, customers may experience even longer wait times or service unavailability. It's worth noting that surge pricing is not limited to transportation services. Other industries, such as hotels, airlines, and even online marketplaces, may also employ surge pricing strategies to adjust prices based on demand fluctuations and optimize revenue. A company that openly applies surge pricing tactics and informs its customers about it is Uber. Whenever there is high demand for taxis, often caused at rush hours or other peak periods such as special events or bad weather and not many drivers are on the road, consumers will see an increase in price. This price increase will have an immediate effect on demand, making sure that the ones that really need a taxi will get one and pay more, whilst people that can wait a little longer will postpone their journey until prices are back to normal. On the other hand, it could also affect supply, because more Uber drivers are willing to start driving when they can earn more per ride. Uber applies a pricing logic of multiplying standard rates during these high-demand periods. These multipliers are calculated in real time and change rapidly. In this example of Uber, the size of the pricing multiplier is based on the intensity of market demand due to, for example, peak times or bad weather. Furthermore, multipliers differ from each other based on geographical location. By being transparent about the multiplier to consumers in the app, Uber takes away any ambiguity and lets the consumer decide upon their buying behavior without jeopardizing bad price perceptions. Surge pricing, also known as dynamic pricing or demand-based pricing, is a strategy employed by businesses to adjust prices based on changes in supply and demand. It is commonly used in industries such as transportation, hospitality, and e-commerce. The concept of surge pricing involves increasing prices during periods of high demand or low supply to balance the available resources and meet the needs of customers. This pricing model aims to incentivize customers to adjust their consumption patterns or opt for alternative options when demand is high, thereby helping to manage capacity and avoid shortages. One of the most well-known examples of surge pricing is seen in the ride-sharing industry. Companies like Uber and Lyft implement surge pricing when there is high demand for rides, such as during peak hours, holidays, or special events. When surge pricing is in effect, the fares increase above the usual base rate, encouraging more drivers to be available and providing an opportunity for drivers to earn higher incomes. Surge pricing can be controversial, as it can lead to significantly higher prices during certain periods. Critics argue that it can exploit consumers who have limited alternatives or urgent needs, potentially leading to price gouging. However, proponents argue that surge pricing helps balance supply and demand, ensures availability, and incentivizes more service providers to participate during peak periods. It's worth noting that surge pricing is not limited to transportation. Other industries, such as hotels, airlines, concert tickets, and online marketplaces, may also employ similar pricing strategies to manage demand and optimize their operations. Ultimately, surge pricing is a dynamic pricing mechanism that allows businesses to adapt to changing market conditions and allocate resources more efficiently based on demand fluctuations. Surge pricing is often used as a pricing method in the following scenarios. High demand cannot be served and needs to be controlled. A combination of high demand, stable supply, and little elastic products result in higher margins to be gained. When high demand occurs and supply cannot be guaranteed, surge pricing can be used as a method to control demand and supply. Therefore, sellers want to shift sales towards the consumers with a higher need or a higher willingness to pay. When prices increase, consumers can make two decisions. Either they decide to still buy the product or service, or they decide to postpone their purchase because the higher price does not fit their individual demand curve anymore. When their need is still high enough and the increased price will fit their willingness to pay, consumers will continue the transactions regardless of the price increase. Due to this natural filtering method, only a smaller group of consumers must be served, and this is rebalancing the high demand period. Although the demand in retail does not in the taxi industry, there are still many opportunities to use surge pricing on a daily basis in the retail sector. For instance, surge pricing is often used when stock levels are running extremely low or when delivery problems of the products occur. In these cases, high demand is preferably slowed down by increasing prices and therefore shifting demand to the consumers with a higher need or willingness to pay. Periodically increased demand in combination with stable supply and products that are not highly elastic can result in temporary higher prices. When this opportunity presents itself in the market, organizations often want to take advantage of it and increase profit margins on their products. Do note that surge pricing only works when the supply is limited and products are not very elastic. In case the supply is not limited, the overall stock is high or additional supply can be purchased, it is probably not wise to increase prices. In that case, customers will normally still have purchasing options at competitors, and it is most often better to keep the prices stable and increase your turnover. Surge pricing, also known as dynamic pricing or demand-based pricing, is a pricing strategy used by businesses, particularly in the transportation and hospitality industries, to adjust prices based on demand and supply conditions. The concept of surge pricing gained significant attention through its implementation by ride-hailing companies like Uber and Lyft. During periods of high demand, such as rush hour or busy weekends, surge pricing allows companies to increase their prices temporarily to balance supply and demand. The goal is to incentivize more service providers to join the market and meet the increased demand. By raising prices, the companies aim to strike a balance between supply and demand, ensuring that customers who are willing to pay more can still access the service. The surge pricing mechanism typically operates using algorithms that automatically adjust prices based on real-time data. Various factors can trigger surge pricing, such as increased demand, limited availability, or special events. The algorithms take into account factors like historical demand patterns, current demand levels, driver availability, and other relevant data points to determine the surge multiplier or surge rate. The surge multiplier represents the additional amount customers will pay during surge pricing. For example, if the surge multiplier is set at 1.5x, customers will be charged 1.5 times the regular fare. The surge multiplier can vary depending on the intensity of demand. During extreme peak periods, surge multipliers can reach higher levels, such as 2x or more. The purpose of surge pricing is to create an equilibrium between supply and demand, allowing the market to efficiently allocate resources. By increasing prices during peak periods, companies encourage more drivers or service providers to enter the market, as they can earn higher incomes. This, in turn, helps to reduce wait times and ensure that customers can access the service when they need it, albeit at a higher cost. Critics of surge pricing argue that it can lead to price gouging, where prices become unreasonably high and take advantage of consumers during urgent or essential situations. However, proponents argue that surge pricing promotes efficient allocation of resources, encourages additional supply, and ultimately benefits consumers by reducing wait times and increasing service availability during peak periods. It's important to note that surge pricing is not limited to the transportation industry. It can also be found in other sectors such as hotels, airlines, and concert ticket sales, where prices may increase during high demand periods or special events. Surge pricing only really works when the demand for a service is immediate. For some, surge pricing, the use of algorithms to automate price increases on products and services in periods of high demand and limited supply, adheres to a basic principle of the free market economy. Others see it as a form of price gouging, a pejorative term referring to when a seller spikes the prices of goods, services or commodities to a level much higher than is considered reasonable or fair, and is considered exploitative, potentially unethical. Usually this event occurs after a demand or supply shock after a natural disaster. Regardless of your point of view, the use of surge pricing appears likely to increase as a growing number of companies in the on-demand economy test its application. Surge pricing, also known as dynamic pricing or demand-based pricing, is a pricing strategy used by businesses, particularly in the transportation and service industries, to adjust prices based on the level of demand at a given time. It involves increasing prices during periods of high demand and reducing them during periods of low demand. The concept of surge pricing is often associated with ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft, where fares can increase significantly during peak hours or when there is a shortage of available drivers. The aim of surge pricing is to balance supply and demand by incentivizing more drivers to come online and meet the increased demand, thus reducing waiting times for customers. Surge pricing is typically implemented through an algorithm that takes into account factors such as the number of available drivers, current demand, and historical data. When demand surpasses a certain threshold, The algorithm automatically increases the prices to encourage more drivers to join the platform and provide services. The pricing multiplier can vary depending on the extent of demand, and it is usually communicated to the customers before they confirm their booking. While surge pricing can lead to higher fares during busy periods, it is intended to help maintain a reliable and efficient service. By incentivizing more drivers to be available, surge pricing aims to ensure that customers can get a ride when they need one, even during peak times. However, it's worth noting that surge pricing can be a source of controversy, as customers may feel that the increased prices are unfair or exploitative. It's important to understand that surge pricing is not limited to ride-sharing services. Other industries, such as airlines, hotels, and concert ticket sales, also use similar pricing strategies to adjust prices based on demand. The goal is to balance supply and demand dynamically, optimizing revenue and resource allocation. Ultimately, surge pricing is a mechanism used to manage supply and demand imbalances in real time, ensuring availability and encouraging participation from service providers during periods of high demand. From a business perspective, surge pricing is a useful pricing strategy to balance supply and demand, and generate profit during peak periods. However, it can also lead to negative customer experiences, especially when it appears to be exploitative or opaque. In addition, surge pricing may have implications for income inequality, as lower-income customers may be more affected by sudden price fluctuations. These concerns may prompt regulatory intervention to ensure fairness and transparency in pricing practices. Ultimately, businesses must weigh the benefits and risks of surge pricing and determine whether it aligns with their goals and values. Surge pricing, also known as dynamic pricing, refers to the practice of adjusting prices for goods or services based on supply and demand conditions. It is commonly associated with the transportation industry, particularly ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft, but it can also be applied to other sectors such as hospitality and e-commerce. The concept behind surge pricing is that when demand for a particular product or service exceeds its availability, the price increases to incentivize more suppliers to enter the market or to encourage consumers to reduce their demand. The goal is to balance supply and demand dynamically and efficiently. In the context of ride-sharing services, surge pricing typically occurs during periods of high demand, such as rush hour, holidays, or bad weather conditions. When demand outstrips the number of available drivers, the price of rides increases significantly, often resulting in higher fares for passengers. Surge pricing serves a few purposes. Supply management: by increasing prices during peak demand, surge pricing encourages more drivers to be available on the platform, increasing the supply of rides and reducing waiting times for passengers. Incentivizing drivers: higher prices during surge periods can motivate drivers to go online and provide services, as they stand to earn more money during those times. Demand management: surge pricing also helps manage demand by discouraging some passengers from requesting rides during peak periods, thus reducing overall demand and balancing supply and demand. Critics of surge pricing argue that it can lead to price gouging and take advantage of consumers during urgent or essential situations. However, proponents argue that surge pricing reflects the true market value of a service during periods of high demand and helps ensure the availability of services when they are most needed. It's important to note that surge pricing is a business strategy implemented by companies and can vary in its application and effectiveness across different industries and platforms. Surge pricing, also known as dynamic pricing or demand-based pricing, is a pricing strategy implemented by businesses, particularly in the transportation and service industries. It involves increasing prices during periods of high demand or low supply to balance supply and demand and maximize revenue. Surge pricing is commonly used by ride-sharing companies like Uber and Lyft. When there is a high demand for rides, such as during peak hours, bad weather, or special events, the prices automatically increase. This encourages offering them higher earnings and helps ensure that customers can still get a ride when demand is high. Surge pricing is intended to incentivize drivers to supply more services and balance the demand-supply equation. The surge pricing mechanism typically relies on algorithms that analyze real-time data, such as the number of available drivers, the number of incoming ride requests, and historical demand patterns. When demand surpasses the supply of drivers, surge pricing is triggered, resulting in higher prices for customers. While surge pricing can be beneficial for businesses and drivers, it can be a source of frustration for customers who may find the increased prices unaffordable or inconvenient. To address this, some companies implement features like surge notifications that inform customers of the increased prices before they request a ride or service. It's important to note that surge pricing is not limited to the transportation industry. Other sectors, such as hospitality, travel, and entertainment, may also employ surge pricing strategies during peak seasons or high-demand periods to optimize revenue and manage capacity. From a consumer perspective, surge pricing can be frustrating and can lead to a feeling of being taken advantage of. Additionally, it can be difficult to predict when surge pricing will occur and how much it will cost, causing concern about transparency and fairness. However, surge pricing can also incentivize drivers or service providers to work during peak periods, which can improve overall availability and service quality. It is important to note that surge pricing is not unique to ride-sharing services or delivery apps, and has been in use in other industries for a long time, such as airlines and hotels. The key is finding a balance between business goals and consumer satisfaction, with a focus on transparency and fairness. Surge pricing, also known as dynamic pricing or demand-based pricing, is a pricing strategy used by businesses, particularly in the transportation and hospitality industries, to adjust prices based on changes in supply and demand. It involves charging higher prices during periods of high demand or low supply. Surge pricing is typically implemented through the use of algorithms that analyze real-time data, such as the number of available drivers or hotel rooms and the current level of demand. When demand exceeds supply, prices are increased to encourage more supply to come onto the market or to discourage excessive demand. The goal is to balance supply and demand and ensure that services are available to those who are willing to pay more. The concept of surge pricing gained significant attention with the rise of ride-hailing services like Uber and Lyft, which often implement surge pricing during peak hours or when there is limited availability of drivers. During these times, the prices for rides can increase substantially, sometimes by multiple times the normal fare. The objective is to incentivize more drivers to be on the road, thus reducing the waiting time for passengers. Surge pricing has been met with both praise and criticism. Proponents argue that surge pricing allows for efficient allocation of resources, encourages more service providers to enter the market, and provides a better experience for those who are willing to pay a premium. On the other hand, critics argue that surge pricing can lead to price gouging, making services unaffordable for some customers during crucial times. They also argue that surge pricing may be exploitative during emergencies or crises when people may have no choice but to pay exorbitant prices. It's important to note that surge pricing is not limited to transportation services. It can also be applied in other sectors, such as hotels, airlines, and event ticketing, where prices are adjusted based on demand fluctuations. Overall, surge pricing is a strategy used by businesses to balance supply and demand by adjusting prices dynamically. While it has benefits in terms of resource allocation, it can also be a subject of controversy depending on its implementation and impact on consumers. Companies can mitigate the negative effects of surge pricing by providing clear communication about when and why surge pricing is in effect. They should also offer alternatives to customers who cannot afford the surge pricing, such as a waiting list or a lower-priced option with longer wait times. Another way to address concerns around surge pricing is to implement a cap or limit on the maximum amount that can be charged during peak periods. This can help prevent customers from feeling like they are being taken advantage of and ensure a more equitable pricing system. Ultimately, companies should prioritize finding a balance between managing supply and demand while also providing a fair and transparent pricing system for customers. By doing so, they can improve customer loyalty and trust, leading to a more sustainable and successful. Thank you for watching the video and subscribe the channel.